Play different.
Greetings fellow Mac addicts. In this video we're looking at Ground Zero by Mind Sports. This is a very solid clone of Atari's Missile Command with some little ideas of its own. I would like to start by bringing your attention to this incredible box art. I mean, just look at this. I mean, sure, there's actually no giant gorilla in the game, but who cares? Look how cool this looks. But enough about the box art. How does the game actually play? Well, let's find out, shall we? Yes, let's shall. If you've never played Missile Command, here are the basics. Missiles rain down from the sky, and you have to stop them from destroying the cities down below. You do this by moving a cursor around the screen, and then launching your own missiles at that target. Once your missile reaches the target, it will then explode, hopefully catching enemies in a blast radius and causing a chain reaction of explosions. Creating these chain reactions is the main mechanic of the game, and it's very satisfying when you make a big one. Ground Zero is a very good clone of Missile Command, partly because it follows the formula so closely, and you can tell the creators understood what made Missile Command work. But as I mentioned earlier, there are a few differences. First of all, it offers a simplified control method, where if you click the mouse button, a missile will fire out of the base closest to your cursor. You can also use keyboard buttons to shoot out of a specific base, which is what Missile Command did. Ground Zero also adds a few more enemies, most notably the Kamikaze enemy, which dive bombs at cities and bases. Also, after every 4th level, you get a new rank, complete with a shiny new badge. It adds a nice sense of progression to the game aside from it just getting harder. Speaking of levels, each one in Ground Zero is a different type of wave, focusing on different enemies or different combinations of enemies. This helps it not become repetitive too quickly, as the game ends up feeling a bit more varied. The difficulty also doesn't increase as quickly as it does in Missile Command. This makes sense as it's a home game and isn't trying to eat up all your coins. In many ways, I would consider Ground Zero just as good, if not better, than Missile Command, but it does fall short of the original arcade game in a few ways. First of all, it doesn't play nearly as smoothly, although it's still very playable. Secondly, although Ground Zero has more horizontal space than Missile Command, it has less vertical space. This is due to the different specifications of the screens of the hardware. The thing is, Missile Command is a very vertical game, and it just feels better if it's played on a screen with a vertical orientation. Although this was a very common problem with most home versions of Missile Command, and the game does take this into consideration by making the explosions quite wide. Also, like many early Macintosh games, the sound design is a little bit weak. Finally, Missile Command was made in response to fears of nuclear war during the Cold War. This is especially hammered home with the Game Over screen because it doesn't actually say Game Over. Instead, it says The End in huge letters, saying that it's basically the end of civilization. Ground Zero, on the other hand, just says Game Over, losing the message and the impact that came with it. I quite like the visuals of the game, especially the little cities. Mainly because I grew up with the Atari 2600 version of Missile Command, where I thought the cities were actually shrubberies. So a lot of the theme was lost on me. Thankfully, it was still fun to play. Here is a little bit of trivia. Two people who worked on this game, Daryl Myers and Seth Lipkin, would later team up again to work on the popular arcade puzzle series Spin Doctor. Ground Zero is a very good clone of Missile Command, and one of the best ones on the early Macintosh, and there were quite a few of them. It's definitely my favourite one that follows the formula closely, but there are other ones that interest me more because they really try to do their own thing. But I'll look at those another time. For now, I'll just say that if you're looking for a solid arcade game for your classic Macintosh, Ground Zero is a great choice, because despite the name, it is a hero, not a zero.